Thank you. Thank you. Hello. How are we? Great. Awesome. I got to tell you, being at this point in the agenda is a tough job because I'm an active listener. I want to totally redo my whole presentation, but I don't have time to do that. So if you will give me the grace and space to try to connect some dots today with the few slides that I put together, I would love that because this is what I call collective learning. And it's accretive and it's generative. And that's what's been so cool about this lab. And Angela and team, thank you for this experience because I met Angela some years ago. Angela, I've lost track of time when that was, but some years ago. And you know when you meet people and you go like, I don't know when, where, or how, but we're going to be in touch. And when I happened to see that she posted something online that she had moved back to Chicago and I had just moved back to Chicago, I said, look at universe. It happens. And so I'm so super excited to be here with you guys. So my topic today is to talk about the future of listening. And I've been listening for a long time. So I've got my 10,000 hours. How many of you have your 10,000 hours of listening? All right. So we got a few folks that have got some experience in this. And so just to give you a little bit, I'm Chris Powell. I'm CEO. I've got slides, so I should pull these up. How do we go? There we go. I'm Chris Powell, CEO of Talmetrics, and we're an employee feedback and organizational insights company. So we help companies capture the voices of their employees regarding their experience, be it on culture, diversity, equity, inclusion, leadership effectiveness, change or transformation, any of the things that an organization is curious about the employee's perspective. And in addition to that, we also mine organizational data to find the signal in the noise. Because how many people have taken an employee survey and told the truth? The absolute truth. How many people haven't told the truth on an employee survey? Right. So what we know, there's some false positives sometimes when we do listening strategies. And so what we like to say, we like to capture the facts and the feelings so that we can triangulate to find out where the opportunity is. And so that's what we're doing. And so when we talk about the future of listening, it's really part of your measurement strategy. And so many of you are championing projects and things of sort where you're collecting data. And so what I want to talk about are some of the things and trends that we're seeing that are positively helping us get clearer where those opportunities are. Because there's a lot of noise in society, inside of organizations. We were just saying, hey, if it's happening outside, it's happening inside. So how do we find that clarity? Because our challenge is that we have to hold multiple versions of the truth and still find a way forward, right? And I was in a conversation with somebody recently, and they said, well, the truth is, I said, according to who? Think about it. Think about it. According to who? You, me, and them, right? Up there, the aliens are now here too, so, I don't know. But what I can tell you, that how many folks watch Jurassic Park, the movie, the series? And you remember that famous line in there, life will find a way? You remember that one? We've got to find a way. In all of the noise and challenges, our job is to continue to find a way. And listening, I've forgotten our friend who was speaking about the loving, is Jasmine, thank you. Jasmine said, one of the first acts of love is listening. So think about employee listening. It's an act of love. I've never put that together. So guess what? I'm gonna get a t-shirt, whole 9 yards. You'll see it on my Instagram handle coming up real soon. But there we go. So let's talk about a couple of things. Organizations are dynamic human systems. What is the most unpredictable element in the world? Anybody know? Humans. more unpredictable than uranium, plutonium, and all the other, right? And so in the, wait, whoa, oh, we're getting cozy in here now. I'm loving this. And so when we think about organizations as dynamic human systems, that means they're thinking, they're feeling, they're sensing, and they're constantly changing. But what happens when we think about listening strategies or measurement strategies, we're trying to figure out stasis moments. And is there really a stasis moment in any organization? But why is it that we design our measurement and listening strategies in a static framework, right? So are we setting ourselves up for failure when we do that, right? So keep this in mind as we're thinking about the future of listening and as you're thinking about your strategies, because how many of you in your projects that you're working on have or will be sourcing feedback from employees? Right, okay, got it. This is great. So as we think about, before I leave off of this, so this is me weaving in a few things that I've heard over the last day and a half. And so when I think about addressing the challenges of traditional listening strategies, right? Most often it's dialogic, you might have a focus group, you might be doing some one-on-ones. One of the things that we're seeing become really effective is the integration of dialogic and diagnostic with linkage. Does anybody know what I mean by that? Okay, so dialogic. Think about, those are conversations. Think about those are those one-on-ones, those are those focus groups, those town halls that you're having. And with the advances around technology, around having your little AI chatbot friend being able to take your notes, you're now able to cultivate data from those conversations and use that not only to capture the themes, but also get into sentiment with natural language processing and AI. Now, we're all familiar with the surveys, you know, be it Glint or SurveyMonkey or Gallup or all of those tools. That's your traditional diagnostic. It's structured. You're controlling the questions that you're asking. But think about when you're in your listening strategy, just like most science and research, you got to be mindful of being biased. Many of us will probably in this room subscribe to the positive psychology, world of positive psychology. But guess what? All organizations have underbellies. So how are we making sure that the things that we're exploring get at both that shadow aspect of the organization as well as the light? Because many of us change agents want to focus just on that light. We want to get to the light, but what we do know that as we evolve, our shadow grows in proportion. So the world is in balance, so in one way or the other. So that's why we've got to hold the whole system and not just the system part of ourselves that we want to see and get excited about. Because real growth happens when you shed light on your shadow. And so when we're thinking about our measurement strategies and things of sort, make sure that we're being balanced and getting that holistic picture of who we are in terms of things going forward. So that's me weaving in a little bit of stuff that I've heard here and there through the course of the day, of the last 2 days. All right, so some of the things around what I call the science of measuring, right? You gotta know what you're measuring for. And I've heard through conversations with folks one-on-one and also in the presentations, I've heard teams working on culture. I've heard teams working on employee experience. I've heard teams talking about inclusion. And I've heard teams talking about change and transformation, or combinations of these. But have we really stopped and asked ourselves, are we measuring the things that are going to give us the insights that we need to inform our strategies or our actions, right? And there are far other ones, but these are the ones that spoke out to me as I was putting together these slides. And as you can see, under each one of these are different kind of constructs and research that gives us the science around measuring these things, right? And so one of the things, I had a client in the pharma industry, and the client was like, oh, we just want to measure happiness. I was like, okay, and for what? What's the intent? What are you trying to drive? What's the outcome? And so your listening strategy needs to be in service to something. And so what's the something that you want your listening strategy to do? Is it to drive engagement? Is it to drive performance? Is it to drive productivity, commitment, brand reputation? What? And so oftentimes, folks are just curious to want to know because we're nosy. We just want to know, but for what? In service to what? So I ask, as you think about your employee listening strategy, always remember it's important to know what aspect of the experience that you're trying to measure and in service to what, right? And so that's really important because when you know what you're in service to and you're thinking about measuring over time, because back to there is no stasis, and you're creating a generative measurement strategy, meaning that you're measuring as you're going, because this life is iterative, just like my presentation right now is iterative. All right. Now, so this is 15 minutes is hard for a guy like me because I got a lot of stuff I could talk about. I could wax on and wax off at any given time. But so we just talked real quickly about the science, what to measure, and making sure that you've got focus around those outcomes. And then Angela was like, well, Chris, talk about some of the things that are happening from a technology front. I said, sure, this is great. And I just put 4 of the ones that I'm seeing and in my own business I'm working on at the same time, so I'm being biased. So let me just tell you what I'm focusing on right now. Is this whole concept of agile iterative feedback. So getting out of the annual process or the random pulse survey that pops up is really stepping back and asking yourself, what is my generative measurement strategy to support the strategy or the actions of whatever it is that you're working on? So if it's culture, right? What's the average length of transforming a culture? How long does that typically take? Anybody want? You can't answer, Angela. Joe? 6 months to a year. Anybody else? 3 years. All right. I would say 3 generations. 3? Whoa. Oh, man. I don't know if I've got enough time on that one. Well, what we do know, it doesn't happen overnight. There's not what I call a silver bullet. It's not a quick fix. But what it means is if we're talking about moving an organization or a team from to, that is over time, right? And we know as humans, yeah, the change event happens, but we have to transition into that change. And so we've got to measure and understand where people are, because guess what? In that transition, it happens. And I didn't put the sh in it, but it happens in that transition. And so how do you stay attuned? Because we are dynamic. And not only the things that are happening inside the organization that are impacting us, but we got the whole outside. And the whole conversation about the upcoming election, I was like, daggone it, yeah, you're right. Gotta think about that. And how's that gonna influence performance and productivity and culture and all of these things over the next couple of months, all right? So agile and iterative feedback. So think about not just that one time you get your baseline and then you wait for another 12 to 18 months. Think about how you get touch points along the way. But here's the beauty of leveraging diagnostic and dialogic, because in your change transformation process, you're in conversation, so use that information in addition to the diagnostic information so that you can have ongoing insights. The other thing, everybody is seeing these real-time feedback platforms. Everybody's out there, from Culture Amp to Tiny Pulse. Slack is even in the game. So everybody's getting into the game of real-time feedback. So use the tools that are out there to help you get more efficient and effective with things. The other thing that is out there that you hear is around sentiment analysis and thematics and oh, now we can run our open-ended comments through a sentiment analysis and it can tell us the themes and how people are feeling. Well, here, caution, folks. Those tools are only as good as those folks who programmed them. And back to the point of stasis, If those tools are not constantly being updated, they're losing track of the what I call the ethos of what's happening. And so here's what I would say. If you're using NLP for anything, make sure you're leveraging the technology and still keep a human eye to review it and make sure that it's got the context. Because how many of you have used ChatGPT, right? And somebody said ChatGPT is even making the 50% of the people who are less smart than the other 50% smarter, but not really. So you got to keep up with me on that one. But the thing that's interesting is these tools are really great. They're helping us be more efficient on things, but at the same time, they don't have the context of the conditions and the environment in which things are happening. If you think about ChatGPT, will come back to you every time. Well, I don't have data on past 2021. All right? We're 3 years later. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about leveraging tools like NLP or ChatGPT that help you with things, that you still need that human eye to be able to discern the insights there. And then the one that is really interesting to me that is forthcoming quick, fast, in a hurry is around personalization. So if you think about media, I was in the media industry for a number of years, and one of the things, we went from mass media to individualized media thanks to the phones, right? I grew up in a day where there was ABC, CBS, PBS, and NBC. That was it. Now, when I'm talking to folks, oh, where's that? What platform is that? Is that on Hulu? Is that on Amazon? You know, you got so many options that you can customize that content which you receive. And so imagine now you're going to be able to see these tools that are going to be serving up specifically to you questions around your experience, which then keep us in the bubbles that we're in. So if you're driving a change transformation, on one hand, you think this is great. But if you're trying to figure out where everybody is, it's like this individuation creates all of these unique identities, and as an organization, it gives us more challenge on how to program and strategize on how to address it. So therefore, we've got to figure out, again, how to find the themes that meet us at a human level and not the individual level, because organizations are what? Human systems, collectives. And so, but yet we're living these lives of identity and individualization, which is all great, but when you're trying to move a collective, you've got to find that human connection point. So I am here for the tech, I'm here for it all, but at the same time, I remind us all to be humans. Remember that we're humans in this work. All right. Now, so we talked about what's happening in the world of science and measurement, and remember dialogic, diagnostic, and linkage. And before I get into, I'll come back to linkage in a minute as I'm going through these. I'm going to just talk about some things just from a process standpoint. As Angela mentioned, we wanted to make sure that we shared tips and insights and hacks to help you go back to your workplaces and be able to elevate your game, right? And so that's why we're here at the lab. We're here chopping it up so we can get smarter, we can get better, right? And so one of the things in employee listening is really being clear about your objectives, the why. I grew up in a big family, and the way our family dynamics worked, information was power. So if you knew some things, you knew who you could blackmail. Yep, you did. Hey, you came in at 11:05. I got receipts. I was that kid. But so be clear about your objectives of what you're measuring, right? Get real focus on back to what you're measuring, what outcomes are you trying to influence, and get clear on that. And then the other piece that I see often is that organizations measure, but they never go back to check the efficacy of their measurements, right? So there's this whole concept in I/O called confirmatory analysis. You've got to confirm that what you heard, because back to the other point, there's false positives in data. And so part of our job is to make sure that we're paying attention to that focus signal in the noise that we're getting across all these data points. So that whole tracking your progress, checking yourself to make sure that you're driving that out. Then the other thing that's really interesting is around making sure that your tools are inclusive. In particular, we do a lot of work with organizations that support employees with disabilities. So if you're doing a survey, right, think about, is it screen reader is it screen reader enabled? Do you have language translation? Because even though your organization's business language may be English, you may have a lot of folks in the organization whose English is their second language. And so if you think about translating and comprehension of the questions, making sure that you can address and have the surveys or the feedback loops as open as possible, right? And then the other thing that we've talked about over the last 2 days is this whole concept of psychological safety, right? How many of you have had an employee survey campaign where employees are like, I'm not taking that because I don't think it's anonymous? The retaliation or the fear of, right? So one of the things that we have to constantly do is that has been around for the X number of years I've been in this business. And part of that is culture, because there's low levels of trust, right? And so as you're thinking about your campaigns and building your momentum around collecting feedback, think of creative ways to get people comfortable in sharing information. And that's why I say use a balance of tools, the diagnostic and the dialogic. We're working with Angela and team on a project where we did that, right? We had a combination of a survey, plus we did focus groups, plus we did one-on-ones, plus we did leader listening. And in that, we were able to triangulate where the real opportunities are. And still, you had employees saying, hey, I don't trust that this is anonymous, but we still were able to get rich data. So that noise won't go away, folks. So let me not say there's a silver bullet out there. That's why we have to deploy multiple different tools to make sure that we're able to capture the voice of folks in the organization. Actionable insights and continuous improvement. The one point I'm gonna hit here, and I was talking to Jessica about this, is the second bullet. When you're participating in a process and you're contributing to it, you're more likely to do what? Be invested, right? So think about when you're thinking about your listening strategy, just don't be greedy and get the information and then not engage people. Make sure you create a way that those folks who have shared information actually can also participate in that with you, all right? And then my big one, and my last big header here that I will share with you on the process is stakeholder commitment and accountability. Oftentimes you see this just as leader commitment and accountability. We're in organizations and we all are citizens of that organization, so how do we collectively take ownership? I have been in programs and run programs where employees around engagement was like, well, I had to take the survey. No, you also have to be a part of the solution. We need your commitment to this work, because change, you cannot just expect leaders to change. Sometimes we have to change. And so I'm gonna leave you with these quick tips. I wish I had more time with you, and if you want to talk more about measurement and strategy and insights and all that good stuff, it's my jam. I live for this stuff. If you know me, I'm a nerd, so earlier we were talking about nerds. I'm that guy. I'm here for you, and thank you for the time.